Mr. President.
Oh, yes, excuse me, sir.
Thank you. Mr. President, you don't seem to be pushing the space program nearly as energetically now as you suggested during the campaign that you thought it should be pushed. In view of the feeling of many people in this country that we must do everything we can to catch up with the Russians as soon as possible, do you anticipate applying any sort of crash program or doing anything that would...
We have added, I think it was $130 million to the budget on space several weeks ago, which provides some speed up for Saturn, some speed up for Nova, some speed up for Rover. And I will say that the budget for space next year will be around $2 billion. Now, we are now, and have been for some time, attempting to make a determination as to, in developing larger boosters, whether the emphasis should be put on chemical, nuclear rockets, or liquid fuel. How much this would cost, and some of these programs have been estimated to be between $20 and $40 billion. We are attempting to make a determination as to which program offers the best hope before we embark on it. Because you may commit a relatively small sum of money now for a result in 1967, 8, or 9, which will cost you billions of dollars. And therefore, the Congress passed yesterday the bill providing for Space Council, which will be chaired by the Vice President. We are attempting to make a determination as to which of these various proposals offers the best hope. And when that determination is made, we will then make a recommendation to the Congress. In addition, we have to consider whether there is any program now, regardless of its cost, which offer us hope of being pioneers in a project. It's possible to spend billions of dollars on this project in space to the detriment of other programs and still not be successful. We are behind, as I've said before, in large boosters. We have to make a determination whether there is any effort we could make in time or money which could put us first in any new area. Now, I don't want to start spending the kind of money that I'm talking about without making a determination based on careful scientific judgments as to whether a real success can be achieved, or whether, because we're so far behind now, this particular race is we're going to be second in this decade. So I will say to you that it's a matter of great concern, but I think that before we break through and begin a program which would not reach a completion, as you know, until the end of this decade, for example, trips to the moon, maybe 10 years off, maybe a little less, but are quite far away and involve, as I say, enormous sum, I don't think we ought to rush into it and begin them until we really know where we're going to end up. And that study is now being undertaken under the direction of the Vice President.
Mr. President, don't you agree we should try to get to the moon before the Russians if we can?
If we can get to the moon before the Russians, we should.
And isn't it your responsibility to apply the vigorous leadership to spark up this program?
When you say spark up the program, we first have to make a judgment based on the best information we can get whether we can be ahead of the Russians to the moon. We're now talking about a program which may be, which are many years away.
The Saturn is still on a 40-hour week, isn't it, Mr. President?
We have, as I say, appropriated $126 million more to the Saturn, and we are attempting to find out what else we can do. The Saturn is still going to put us well behind. The Saturn does not offer any hope of being first to the moon. The Saturn is several years behind the Soviet Union. I can just say to you that regardless of how much money we spend on the Saturn is going to put us, we're still going to be second. The question is whether the nuclear rocket or other kinds of chemical rockets offer us a better hope of making a jump forward. But we are second in and the Saturn will not put us first. I want, however, to speed up, if we can, the Saturn, and the Vice President is now leading a study to see what we ought to do in this area.
Thank you, Mr. President.
President, do you anticipate that there will be a vote in both houses of Congress this year on your medical care program?
I don't know. If we had a vote in the House, would depend, of course, on the action of the Ways and Means Committee, so that I'm not, I haven't any information yet as to whether we'll get a vote in the House. possible there'll be one in the Senate which is not constricted by the same rules.
There have been reports on Capitol Hill that this administration has reconciled itself to no vote on medical care this year.
In either house?
In the House, yes.
In either body, in either house?
Yes, sir.
Well, I haven't seen the reports, and I would not make that assumption. But I'm hopeful that we are dependent in the House on committee action. There can't be a vote in the House without action by the committee, and because of the rules of germaneness. The Senate, however, there's a somewhat different situation where there's no rule of germaneness. So it's possible that somebody might offer the bill in the Senate as an amendment to another bill. I don't know that yet, but there is very possible that you could get a vote in the Senate this year. The House is a different problem because we can't get a vote unless the Ways and Means Committee acts.
Mr. President, your order to investigate General Walker suggests that you look askance at the teachings of the John Birch Society. Can you tell us how you feel about that organization?
Well, I don't think that their judgments are based on accurate information of the kinds of challenges that we face. I think we face an extremely serious and intensified struggle with the communists. But I'm not sure that the John Birch Society is wrestling with the real problems which are created by the communist advance around the world. I would hope that all those who strongly are concerned about it would address themselves to the kinds of problems which are created by Laos, Vietnam, by internal subversion, by the desperate life lived by so many people in this hemisphere and in other places which the communists exploit. These are the kinds of problems which we are dealing with. I said something about them yesterday. The use which the communists make of democratic freedoms and the success which they are able to, once they've seized power, the success with which they are able to maintain their power against dissent. This seems to me to be the problem. We've talked about and read stories of 7,000 to 15,000 guerrillas operating in Vietnam, killing 2,000 civil officers a year, 2,000 police officers a year, 4,000. Now, there's been an election in Vietnam in which 75% of the people, or 80%, endorse the government. And yet we read how Vietnam is in danger because of guerrilla operations carried on by this small, well-disciplined, well-supplied, across the border group of guerrillas. How we fight that kind of a problem, which is going to be with us all through this decade, seems to me to be one of the great problems now before the United States. And I would hope all those who are concerned about the advance of communism would face that problem and not concern themselves with the loyalty of President Eisenhower, President Truman, or Mrs. Roosevelt, or myself, or someone else.
Mr. President, was your speech yesterday before the editors intended to suggest another approach or a new departure in the administration's dealing with the Russians?
No, I didn't. No.
You have practiced what has been described as the quiet diplomacy approach, and your speech yesterday seemed to suggest that you perhaps decided upon another approach.
No, I wouldn't attempt to make a judgment or response to that. I think that I'm concerned about the kind of problem which I just described. I don't feel satisfied that we have an effective answer to it yet. And I think it's a matter of greatest possible concern to all of us because I think events are moving with some speed. The use which the communists make of democracy, and then when they seize power, the effectiveness with which they manage the police apparatus so that dissent cannot arise, and so that the people can no longer express their will, the liquidation by gunfire of the opposition or by forcing them out of the country to be refugees. This suggests the kind of problem which we're going to have in this decade. And in my judgment, it's an extremely difficult matter for the free nations to deal with. But I must say that it's a matter to which we must address all of our energy and all of our attention.
President.
How would you evaluate the present state of your domestic program in Congress?
I think we've done better recently. Yesterday, the Senate passed the $1.25 minimum wage. There was action on aid to dependent children and on Social Security. The vote in the Senate was very ample on the minimum wage. I think there were only 28 votes against it, so that I think that at least yesterday there was we made progress.